All right, so we created this really basic building here. And what I'd like to do is just show you some tricks on how windows are kind of made. And then what we'll do is a process called vertex coloring where we kind of just add a little bit of color to this building. And then we can move on to something a little bit more advanced. But at least for this week's lesson, you get a good introduction to setting up Unity. Spend some time scrolling your wheel in out to zoom, clicking your wheel in to pan, alt and left clicking to rotate, hitting F to focus. You're just trying to get comfortable with the environment. And so also these tools, there's a lot going on here. So if you feel a little frustrated, like how do you move? How do you pan? Like getting the camera, you have an entire week just to kind of play around in here. Let's say we want to add some windows. Generally, there's a couple different ways of doing this where you can model a window, like kind of how we modeled this big building, and you can duplicate it a bunch of time. It's called kit bashing or modular modeling. And we're going to get into stuff like that in the more advanced building that we do. Like I said, this is more of a filler building. What we want to do in this one is just play around with the tools and just model something simple. So what I want to do is I'm going to add an edge, and let's talk a little bit about that too. So I'm going to make a new shape. So it's from Pro Builder. I'm going to go to new shape. I'm going to make a cube here. And let's talk about the components of this cube. Well, the cube is consistent of different sides, right? Like we have, 6 sides essentially, right? We have 4 around here, and then we have a top and bottom. Those sides are made up of things called polygons. This is a polygon here. And this polygon has 4 edges. It has an edge up top. Let me click on my edge mode here. It has an edge on the side here. It has an edge over here, and so on. And edges, what an edge is something called, an edge is created between 2 vertices. So what is a vertex? If I click this second option here, you can see these little dots. This dot represents a vertex. See how I can move this vertex up and down by clicking this arrow? So wherever you have these 2 vertex between 2 vertices, and so you probably remember a little bit of this stuff from trigonometry, or if you're got into deep linear algebra, we talk about vectors and vertices and all that stuff. But don't worry, there's not a lot. If you're not a math person, this isn't a heavy math. It's just more math terminology that's used to abstract 3D and geometry. So between these 2 vertices is an edge, and so here's our edge. And we could do things like we can extract an edge, or we can extract a face. So if I select this face here and I click it here, you can see I'm moving it. But if I want to duplicate this face or extrude this face, I hold shift down, and while holding shift, I can select one of these axes. So I'm going to go with the x-axis, which you could see here. And if I drag this out, now you'll see it extruded out that edge, and now, or that face. And now I have an edge right here. So if I click on this edge here and I double click it, depending on where, it's usually below my axis point, you'll see, let me hit F to focus. I've actually selected this entire edge, and now I can move this edge up. So when you're looking at games or films or 3D objects or monsters and stuff, those characters that they're modeling or sculpting consist of vertices, edges, and loops. So I'm going to pause the video and I want to show you an example I'm just going to click online and just type in like character mesh. All right, so here we can see, I just kind of typed in VFX Marvel 3D model. You could type in meshes or whatever, but the thing that I want to point out here is you can see here, these are a bunch of different models that people made for the films. And then if you look, I went back a little bit and I did VFX Marvel 3D models. And I clicked on this image here. And you could see here that this in this image, this is from the film, that these are edges, and these are just little cubes, like little boxes that are broken up across the surface. So these are edges of the constructed 3D models. And sometimes when there's an actor, they'll generate or create a 3D model of the actor as as a placeholder for, and you can see here, this is all 3D, right? This entire environment. And so they're really just placeholders. And then what they'll do here, this is like motion capture data that's placed within it. So you kind of get into this nice habit of, let's see if we could break this down even more. I think this is like a headshot, yeah. of them mapping it to the character's face. So this is like a more advanced version of what we are doing. It's like we're just kind of learning the basics of, how do we create these backgrounds? How do we create these people? Stuff like that. All right, so let's go back to our model, our building model. And if you're interested in stuff and learning more about this, let me know, and we could always talk about this further outside of class or during class. I mean, definitely bring it up. All right, here we are back in our scene. And just like we were looking at in the character, some of those characters from those Marvel films, you have these squares, right? And what we could do is we can also delete these faces. So if I hit backspace on my keyboard, you can see I have a face that's deleted here. I can also do things like I can intrude them. So I'm going to hit R and hold shift, and I can intrude this face. It's also called inset. You'll hear that a lot. And if I hit W again and I hold shift and I move it in, you could see we've essentially just generated a window. So something like that. This can also be a door, right? So if I hit R and hold shift and I bring that in, I select that bottom face and hit backspace, click on this and hit W and move it down. W brings up my axis, and then I hold shift. You can see here, we've really just kind of created a door. Now it starts to get the further you go back inside, you start to get a little bit of some, like where faces intersect, you get something like that where there's weird shadowing happening. And I'll show you how to fix all of that. And this pattern here is probably one of the most interesting patterns where you're insetting a face, because this is also how like eye sockets are made for characters or people, things like that. And so I do teach a character modeling course. And you'll see a lot of the repetitive patterns of modeling. But for right now, for this class, because people are just taking this class for fun, we're going to keep it nice and easy. But those of you who are interested in doing what I do for a career, like some of the things I do for Netflix and so forth, please talk to me outside of class. I would love it. Or please, like I said, bring it up during class. It makes for lively conversation. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and add a cut here. So I'm going to click on this edge here. And then we have a bunch of tools that they give us inside of here. And so I'm going to go ahead and do a, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and subdivide. And when I click on that, you'll notice that it adds subdivisions all the way around my model, these different cuts. Now, this can make the model get a little bit high in polygons. Another way of doing this is, let's just kind of look at, there's this insert edge loop tool. If I click on that, it ends a single edge. See that? On my model. And then I can click this edge here and I can hit insert edge loop, and then it adds a vertical edge. So what it's doing is it's intersecting the edge you select. So if I select this top one, what's nice about this now is I can select this face and I can hit R and hold shift, and I can bring this in, and I'll select this face, hold shift, and I can bring this in. And I've insetted both of those faces. Now on yours, I'm not looking for perfection. I'm just looking for, try to your best to make them match. And then I'm going to hold shift again, and I'm going to intrude those in. And now you can see I've essentially created two windows. All right, so how do we color this? Well, there's a process called vertex coloring. So if I select this face here, what it's going to do is it's going to adjust the way that the color of the surface looks when light hits it. So I can actually change the color of this face and say that when light hits this face, I would like it to look blue. So if I look through here, there's this vertex color. I'm going to turn this on. And this is a nifty technique because if you have a lot of houses that look identical, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's just say, all right, I'm going to click on this. I'm going to move this back. And let's say this is a row home. Like I live in a row house in Chicago. And I'm going to go ahead and hit Control D. And I'm going to just shift this out. So you can see that I've duplicated this. You can also select it in here and hit Control D. And I've selected it 3 times. So here we have 3 row homes that look identical and boring. Well, let's say I want this house to be red, and I want this one to be, blue, and then this one to be green. Well, I'll save a lot on rendering if they're really the same model. It's called a prefab. These are not prefabs, but we'll get into that later. But if it's really the same model, the same mesh, and I'm saving on texture count by using like one image, and we're going to get into texturing later. And vertex colors allows us to paint the surface without adding a lot of overhead or overtaxing the video card. So if I select this here and I double click the surface here, you can see it's selected the entire model. And let's say that this building is red. So I'll move this up here and I hit apply. Now I have a red building there. If I double click this one, I can say this building is blue and this building is, I don't know, purple. And then I can go in here and I can select individual faces and I could say, you know what, all of these buildings should have some kind of glass appearance. So let's go ahead and click in here and let's move it down here and let's take our transparency down a little bit. That's what this alpha is. And let's hit apply. And now we have this pseudo transparent blue window. Now, the thing is, we never created a door, right? A different polygon for a door because there's a single edge there. So what you can do, and this is kind of your introduction to kit bashing, is we can make a door. So let's go ahead and model a quick door. So I'm going to close this out. I'm going to go to new shape, and inside of here, I'm going to zoom in, and I'm just going to draw out a box. I'm going to release my left mouse button and then just move my mouse down a little bit. And then now you can see I have a door. So let's go ahead and center the pivot here because it's kind of in the corner there. So I'm going to go ahead and center pivot, boop, and move this out. Now, what we can do is we can say, you know what, everybody has the same door. So if we turn on vertex colors again and we say, you know what, this is going to be a brown door. Like everyone has like a brown door. Let's go a little bit more towards brown. And I'm going to hit apply. And let's go ahead and create a doorknob. So let's close this. Let's go to new shape. And let's go to sphere. I'm just going to drag out a cube there. And you notice that what's nice about this is it puts the object on the surface. Now, this polygon, this shape here, sorry, let me undo that and do it one more time. New shape, sphere. It's a very high polygon. And what I mean by that, it has a lot of these individual faces here. And that's not necessary because it's going to be super tiny on the screen. And that's a lot of, it takes processing power to render all those triangles. So what you can do is you can play with subdivisions like this and say, you know what, one is low, but when I hit W on that and I click off of it, that looks good enough. So let's go ahead and select that and let's go to vertex colors and let's make that a green handle. Don't judge my, my color properties. I'm just sort of teaching you the basic stuff. So I do have better sense of color, I would hope. All right, so with these both selected, the sphere, right? We have this sphere here and this cube. Where's this sphere at? Oh, it's over here. Let me delete that. So this sphere and cube in here, I'm going to go ahead and merge objects, place it here. And now what I get when I hit Control D is I have something like a kit bash object. Like that. Now, actually, let's delete this. A true kit bash object is something called a prefab, and we'll get into that right now. So inside of my project here, in this assets folder, I'm going to right click and I'm going to create another folder and I'm going to call it art. And inside of this art folder, I'm going to create another folder here and I'm going to call this one inside of the art folder environment. And then inside of that folder, create another one called doors. Now what I can do is this cube here, I can call this brown door. And I can drag it inside here. Now notice that this one here is a blue and this is transparent. Transparency means that it is not a prefab. But when I drag it into doors, you'll see that icon turned blue. And now it becomes a prefab. So what is a prefab? Well, a prefab, prefabs are really nice because they save on memory. And what they are is they are instances of an original master prefab. So let me show you how this works. If I hit Control D here and I move this out and then I move it out again, and I'm like, you know what, that's a pretty wide door, right? So if I go ahead and hit R and I scale this one in and I go ahead and do overrides, apply all, notice that all of these doors changed with it because they're all instances of essentially of each other. So as I edit one, it'll update all of them. So if I hit Control Z and Control Z again, and I just say, you know what, I'm going to make this a little taller and I hit apply. Well, you can't really see that. And then I hit overrides, apply all. You can see it updated all of them. See that? So that's what's nice about prefabs. And also prefabs, you can hold on them Like I can update this prefab and add scripts and things like that to code like doors opening and stuff. And then when I hit apply, it'll add it to everything else, which is pretty nice. So let's go ahead and save our scene and let's see how it looks when we walk up to it. These 3 row houses here. Looks pretty good. And again, these are just placeholder fillers. We're learning this process called gray boxing, learning about kit bashing. And what you can do is if you have a little bit of time and you feel comfortable with this process, you can start going in here and saying, you know what? I kind of want to make this overhang here a different color. So let me go to Tools, Pro Builder here, Pro Builder window, and I'm going to go to Vertex Color, and I want to make, make all of these top pieces like here, Tools, Pro Builder window, Pro Builder window. There we go. Like you want to make these top pieces here like gray or something. So you go through, you select all of them. I'm just holding shift and clicking on all these. And you could do multiple at a time because they're all Pro Builder objects. So that added like a little bit of a personality. If you feel comfortable, you can model awnings, or you could go inside of here, make a new shape and create those little crossbars that go, oops. Just select one building. It kind of freaked out a little bit. Create those little crossbars like this, right? You can hit W, move that out, hit R, play with the scaling. Just make sure that anytime you do stuff like this, you always kind of like merge your object and then you name it, Let's make this. Maybe a gray, make it stand out. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hit Control S to save this. There's a lot going on in this video, so that's why I'm like kind of ending this week's lesson here. So make sure for your assignment you have the 3 buildings done, you have a character walking around, and then what we'll do is next week is we'll start on, or the next lesson we'll start on looking at using blueprints as a way of modeling a building. And so we're really going to use the same technique you just learned on these 3 houses on a bigger scale.